As many of you know, I've been continuing to work on the research for the building of the HMS Ulysses, and very much following Harold Hahn's book, The American Revolution and Their Models, where he describes not just the ships he builds, but in many sense he also talks about how he went about building the various models in the book. And of course the Roebuck is the first model he describes here. And the way he built his models using the upside down method was a building board, and I'm going through different variations of how that building board was made. Another reference that I found is in Ship Model Notes, I think it's book number 1, on page 90, which Harold Hahn has his plank on frame technique. And it's a fairly extensive coverage of what he does and how he builds his boats. So you'll find that very useful. And Mr. Hahn, instead of plywood, he is using 1/4-inch masonite, which I think is the largest thickness that it comes with. Although when I look at the photograph, it looks thicker than that. So he may in fact have mounted it onto some plywood. In fact, in my research, I came across a video produced by John Garnish, which shows how he used the same method and in fact modified the jig in a little way. If you're fortunate enough to be a member of the Society of Model Shipwrights, of course you can go into the files and look at this DVD. It's very well produced by John. If not, this is a very good reason for you to actually go out and join the society so you can get exposed to all the wonderful material that you will find there or on the Nautical Research Guild. Recently, I was in the National Maritime Museum of Barcelona, and we were given a tour of the museum by the director. And it was interesting when we went into the model workshop, which is attached to the museum. There they were building a fairly large model using a version of the hand method, but actually the frame came about halfway up the side of the hull. It was built upright, but again using the same method and using plywood and some long bolts to hold it in place. So again, a variation and a very interesting method. So I'm going to take you through and just give you an idea of where I've reached with the building board as I try to figure this thing out. While of course I'm trying to get back to the building of the Thorn. These days I've had a lot of trouble coming back and getting going on the Thorn again. In terms of the building board, it was suggested that I use 1/2-inch ply that is 2 feet wide and 4 feet long. Fortunately for me, my wife just replaced her kitchen, and we had a bunch of 3/4-inch MDF, and I'm going to use that as the base for the building board. I was able to find a piece of the kitchen that was 16.5 inches wide by 44 inches long. Unfortunately, it's 3/4 inch thick, so I'll have to add a 1/4 inch to each of the frames to make sure that they sit properly in the building board. I've made it up in 4 parts. You can see the parts here, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the centerpiece is screwed on to really make sure that when I go to lay out, when I stick the plan onto the building board, that it's really stiff and I don't get any movement so that the frames will line up perfectly. And then these pieces are simply bolted down, again, to keep the whole thing rigid. And then what you do is you stick the plan on top of the building board. And just to restate the obvious, this is a strap piece of MDF. And of course, common sense will tell you that you need to prepare and cut the building board before you stick the plan on. And perhaps the most important thing is that you make sure that the building board is absolutely square and that you're going to put the center line of the plan exactly in center, so that when you take a square and put it on the building board, it's going to be absolutely square to the center line of the model. And again, all of these cuts need to be made long before you stick the plan onto the building board. Now this is my second attempt. The first attempt, I had stuck it on, and again, the type of adhesive, they are contact spray adhesives. I decided I actually wanted to use full strength PVA to minimize the impact on the paper, not watered down PVA, because watered down could melt the paper. And then I would line up the two lines on the center line. And what happened is, because the paper I used to print it off was so thin, I actually got some movement, and it bent a bit. So I had to tear this off, and I've now produced a heavier paper. And that heavier paper, I can now stick this on, and I'm not going to get any movement. I'm going to get a nice, absolutely straight line. The line was only a 1/16 of an inch off. I got a slight curve, but that would mean that both sides would have been slightly off. So again, I'll go through a little later and show you me sticking this in place, and it gives me some working time to move it around to make sure I get it dead correct. And then of course I'll just put some books on it to make sure I get it absolutely flat and stuck on the board. Then I'm going to cut out the center in a rough area, and then I can break up the 4 parts and go on the outside saw and cut out the various frame spacings. They're not small sheets of paper. Just use this to hold the edge down. And what I did, instead of using the digital file, I simply took the Harold Hahn plans and had the machine just double them in size. And so that's what these are now. And this will give you an idea of the frames. And here is 32. And you'll see the error. It was quite a significant error. So it's just as well I had this done. Well, I've set out the board, masked it out. I have lines to line up, and so it's just a matter of pouring it out. A few little bumps, which I won't affect this, which is the most important part. So we'll take this apart. We're going to cut the lines off and then cut this out, and this is what will remain. I will also cover this. I'm going to spray it in a lacquer so that the paper doesn't get too stale. There's been an opinion expressed that MDF is not really the ideal building board. And if you're going to build a model and it's going to take you 8 years, then perhaps you're right, as you will get moisture will get into the board and you'll get some distortion on it. But this is 8 years. I shouldn't have taken 8 years to build a model. And this type of board, really, it's inexpensive, it's a nice, dense, it's the exact thickness, and it's easy to work with. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with using MDF as a building board. And you can also write on it, as I've done here. These are the lines that were put down over 8 years ago, and they're still perfectly usable and visible today. Now we're going to cut the center out, and there are many ways to do that. You could actually have broken it in parts and put it on a nice big bandsaw and cut it out. I don't have a big bandsaw, I have a small one. So I'm going to reduce the amount of wood here. I put a starter hole, and I'm just going to use a jigsaw and cut down the inside and then take it apart. So the jigsaw cut it out perfectly, which I'm very happy with. And now I'll just break it apart and go on the scroll saw. I will try to do some on my bandsaw, but I have a feeling I'm going to have a depth issue fairly early on. So we're going to do these one piece at a time. You can see it came out pretty cool. And yeah, so now we're just going to go on I'll try the bandsaw first. And if that doesn't work, down to the scroll saw outside. Well, it looks like I'm going to be able to get most of it through. The end here I won't get. So I'll do the end part on the scroll saw outside. Now, having got them all nice cleaned up, we're putting thin CA because this is a wood fiber, and you know, if moisture gets on it, it will deteriorate, and you want nice sharp edges. So thin CA is the ideal thing to tighten up and hold the edges, give you a nice sharp edge. Two other things I didn't show you. One was I had bought this on Amazon not too long ago. And it's a piece of 1/4-inch sandpaper that fits inside the scroll saw. And so it's ideal for letting me clean up these spaces. And the other thing I did when I was cutting out the slots was I had a 1/4-inch template that I put inside to make sure that it fit in each one and gave me a nice tight fit. And now that I put the CA, it's tightened it up, so I may have to just open it up slightly. But this is really very important when you're trying to this is a 1/4-inch file, so is when you're fitting the frame, you don't really want to be fighting up with issues like this. So now we can fit it back together. And so here is the first one completed, installed, finished, ready to accept frames. And we just need to do the other 3 pieces. Well, it's going to take up my entire workbench when time comes to build it. And I think I'm going to have to put a little support here to make sure I don't get any sag on it. Well, sorry, that'll go like that. Something like that. The only thing that I'm now realizing is that each of these measurements, if I come back and this is frame 33, I need to make sure that the spacing between each of these is exactly the same as it'll be up here. So I'm not fighting up when I go to put the frame in and I get a perfect fit. So I'm going to go back and measure all of these, which will be the outside edge of each of the frames, and then come back and check the measurement on the building board and make sure that it's a perfect fit. Now I'm following the tried and true method using some rubber cement. I've cut out the pieces and I'll put that in the jigsaw. I can see this is going to be very expensive in terms of the usage of wood. So I'm probably only going to make up 2 or 3 frames for now, just to make sure I've got everything correct. But it's the same old method, and again, just to remember, I have to add on the 1/4 inch, these 2 top frames. This is frame number 33, which is right in the center. I couldn't close this video without putting at least 1 frame in the building board. I will do 2 more, one at the stern and one at the bow, just to line things up and make sure I've got everything correct. But it is quite rewarding. These Japanese clamps, I'm going to order a few more of them. They really are fantastic and ideal and unintrusive and easy to use. And I will have to put a liner at the bottom, simply to prevent the frames from falling down, which again, looking back at Harold Hahn's book, I realized he actually did have a base plate at the bottom, which makes it easy when lining up the frames. So that's it for now. I'm going to put this down and I will be back on the thorn. And this stays here while I wait on the extra wood that I've purchased for it to dry correctly. So this brings an end to this video, and I'm probably going to start this sometime July, August next year when I complete the thorn. And so that's ready, time to pack this up. And remember, as always, keep modeling,